Log recording. 7:20 in the morning, West Coast time. Still the 27th of October, 2023. Weaver, Tennessee, Roseman, California. A shout out to Google and to YouTube because of the previous video I've done. You guys have put a stranglehold, but I had to keep on top of these strangleholds because this is part of the thing when I'm doing videos and everybody else is doing videos. I know there are community guidelines. I know that there are certain things I can say and not say. And during the COVID nightmare, you got me on one of them. I took your test. We're dealing with a new age and new things here. It's scarier and shit. Now, I know we don't want to spread rumors and everything else around and how to avoid shit like that. But it's scarier for me keeping information from other people. But I understand that there's a fine line. I usually call it the gray area in that one. I don't do demonstrations as much, except I'm going to be putting with a lot of weirdness and humor in the damn thing. Because I know how screwed up and scary it is out there when the wrong information is presented in a way that might hurt people left and right. Well, shit, some of them are actually doing it anyway. I'm just saying, I'm going to try modifying as much as I can, but I'll still say it anyway. If I feel it's necessary for people to understand that they got the choice, they have the choice to do whatever they're going to do. Limiting information to a point, not giving them the choice, uh, not exactly First Amendment, now, is it? Now, let's have an argument about this one here, shall we? Let's have a nice deep discussion about it, Google and YouTube. Now, I know under corporate roles, under the corporate guidelines that you have over there, you only allow a certain amount of freedom and a certain amount of luxury people can actually use before they are yanked back like a dog leash. However, there are reasons that that has to happen because there are certain areas that we cross and there are other, if I can just get my mouth working right, other areas that we're not supposed to cross. There's a lot of case in points I can make on this one. Excuse me. I seem to be a bit gassy today. Is that allowed to say? Am I allowed to say that? I'm gassy today because I'm expelling gases from my gut over here. I'm going to turn on MSNBC right now. I'm missing it. I haven't got that Maine bastard yet.
an armored vehicle involved, and then they're walking along the river, shoulder to shoulder. Some of those are going to be tactical ground searches versus just the kind of standard line search or grid search. The Maine Warden Service do this stuff all the time. They're incredible searching for people, and incredibly valuable for us as it kind of expands out to evidence in many of these circumstances. We do clearly continue to have air assets, whether that's helicopters or planes, just because they're involved. Again, as we mentioned here, right? That's going to be an overview. They're just flying over that site. They may be hovered someplace else. Is that because we found the suspect? That's not a guarantee that that's the case at all. I would also tell you probably new information. Initially, that first night, we had 70-ish or so witnesses. The FBI has been incredibly helpful with things that may sound as simple as you kind of transcribe 70-plus witness statements. They're bringing a lot of resources to play, and so we're continuing to do a lot of that work behind the scenes as well. I think that the shelter-in-place order, right, that's currently in place for Lewiston, Auburn, Lisbon, and Bowdoin. When you hear the names of those communities, obviously you know that a lot of our focus, a lot of what occurred in those communities, whether it's Bowdoin because that's where the suspect's house was, Lisbon where the car was located, or Lewiston, Auburn. Some conversation earlier about Auburn locations, and Lewiston where the focus of those first two tragic active shooter situations occurred. That's an ongoing conversation that we'll have every minute of every day. Does it make sense that those orders are still in place? And can we relax those, change those? They have not been changed in any way at this point. But we realize that we want to keep our community safe. So that's in the forefront of our minds. But we know that a shelter-in-place order in general, similar to orders around COVID, can have some negative impacts on families and go to school and businesses and all those other things. So we have that in our mind. There is that pluses and minuses chart that's just kind of active as we kind of work through this thing. So know that we are actively thinking about that. And truth be told, working with, specifically right here in Lewiston, working with our officials, working with Chief St. Pierre, working with the mayor and others, having conversations about what does that mean, and what is that going to look like this afternoon, tomorrow, and moving forward. So I think that's enough sharing from my end. That's a lot of information to overload you with there. I would want to come back, however, to say that there's a lot of stuff going on here, but what matters to us, again, is the safety of our communities, the safety of our residents. We care about each and every one of them, as you do, and we're going to continue to fight on their behalf to bring this individual to justice, because we know that that has an impact on starting that healing process. It's not a slam dunk. It's not we got them now, everybody's better. This is going to take a while, right? It's going to take a while for communities to work through. It's going to take forever for families to work through. You lose somebody that you loved. That's a big, big deal. So I don't want to get lost in the minutia of this is what we're doing, and this is a map, and it's a QR code. It always comes back to this other stuff for us. So again, we're going to try the Q&A deal and see where we go. Go ahead, right here.
There were reports that you all found a note in his home. Do you know the contents of the note? Can you share that?
Yeah, so we've heard the same thing, and there was a note at one of these residences. I'm not prepared to really talk about what that included. And I think that's probably, again, a common sense answer, because that does involve, is there a mindset here? Is there a motive? What did that entail? So we'll definitely continue to work on that. And when we can release it, we certainly will. Right here, sir.
Commissioner, so in reference specifically to what's behind you and what's going on at the river, is there any information that you have that's leading you in the direction that he may have killed himself and his body is in there, or is it just one of the possibilities?
Well, I think that one of the possibilities is key, right? Because clearly we don't have him located at this point. We don't have him in custody. So all of those options are on the table. We certainly don't want to wait too long, because the river is a big piece of this. The car was located there. Evidence is located in the vehicle right there along the shores of the Androscoggin River. So that's stuff that we want to make sure that we're checking, and we're using the resources that we have available. We're using the expertise that we have available with the dive team and all our partners to make sure we're checking that. At the same time, right, we're checking all these other things. We're working through the crime lab on this other information. So all of those things are occurring at the same time. 8,500 cubic square feet per second. And when they tighten the dam tools down, they actually lower that down to like 5,500 cubic feet, right? Does that mean anything to you? What it means to us is that that current, if we can slow that current down, we can lower the amount of water in the river. It's certainly easier for us to work. It's easier for our divers to see in clearer water than muddier water. If it's a foot lower than it was before, it's easier for us to work. And there's different searches, obviously, but unfortunately, people lose their lives in bodies of water on a regular basis. So this is something that we're trying to dial in. But yes, sir, right here. Yep.
Deer hunting starts tomorrow.
Sure does. Yep.
Yeah. Can you address that?
Yeah, sure. So I've had conversations with Commissioner Camuso, Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. Judy's great. We are having those conversations. I would expect to hear more about that later in the day. It's a big deal in Maine. It may not be a big deal for a lot of people from other communities, but we know what that's going to look like. We also know we're in the woods. You know, if you just happen to be in the woods, minding your own business, going for a walk, that's going to make us a little concerned, right? So it's definitely a good question. It's something that we're actively working on. Right here, sir.
Talk about this tremendous amount of assets here, the search for him. Can you talk about the pressure you guys are feeling to find him, to give this community some sense of answers as this enters its third day?
Yeah, sure. I think pressure is one way to put it. I mean, we're concerned about the victims, their families, and our communities. I'm concerned every day, 24/7, 365. At this point, for 30 years, that's why I got into this business. We do want to help people. We do want to make them safe. Making them safe and making them feel safe may not necessarily be the same thing either, right? Because I think our law enforcement partners, our first responders around the state, everybody is dialed in. They do that all day, every day. This is clearly a completely different animal. So for us, we want to make sure that we bring this individual to custody. But we got to do it right. We got to do it the safe way. We don't want to see anybody else get hurt. Certainly our people and our community members. So we want to make sure that we do that right. We're not going to be rushed, but we're running right on that level. That we're going to work as hard as we can, as fast as we can, with as many resources as we can to try to bring some kind of closure. So right here, man. Right here, man.
We understand that the family is being cooperative. What are they telling you?
Oh, I think whether you see the 530 tips and leads overall, I think we're seeing a lot of cooperation across the board. I'm not going to speak to anybody in particular, but I think there's a lot of cooperation. There's a lot of compassion here. There's empathy that people understand what happened here, not only to the victims, but again to the state and to our country. So people are coming forward. They are participating in the process, and that's just the nature of the beast. But I'm not sure I answered it, so go ahead and follow up.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Family of the suspect. We understand they are cooperating. What are they telling you? How are they helping you investigate?
Yeah, so I won't speak again specifically to what anybody said one way or the other, but we do appreciate everybody's cooperation because we know that this is difficult for everybody. No matter how you could be the neighbor of somebody. This is tough for people to digest and understand and to try to work through. So that's good. Right here, sir. Right here.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
Simply warning. Forget about information. Families told multiple news outlets that there were warnings provided to law enforcement. Which agencies received those warnings, and did you think at any point that it might warrant a yellow flag pursuit?
Well, I'm heavily involved in the yellow flag conversation overall, but the reality for today is I'm not going to talk specifically about who knew what and when. We're still actively involved in a very dynamic situation here, and we're focused on an individual that currently has 8 warrants out for murder. We're trying to figure that part out, trying to bring him into justice, as well as investigate this crime. There will be a time when
Warnings were issued.
I cannot confirm that one. So, sir, right here.
Yesterday, Senator Collins said that the yellow flag law should have been enforced in this situation. So as you stand here today, what is your response to that? And also, as you stand here today, was law enforcement notified of the threats that he was making, of his condition? Were they aware of it, and what steps were taken to investigate that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. And Senator Collins is great. We have a great federal delegation that works incredibly hard on behalf of the state of Maine. I don't know exactly what the good senator said. I respect her a great deal. So I won't answer to any comments that she made. If that's her perspective, based on what she knows through the general public or otherwise, then that's fine. She certainly has the right to do that. But based on what I've seen, we're going to continue to work through that. We asked good questions. It may have been you, sir, around the firearm itself. And there's going to be an opportunity. The ATF is here. The ATF is working with us.
BBC Reports doing Lewiston,
6:56 for the
Maine
initial call,
news
and then
conference,
7:08 for the second
10:35 in the morning.
call. Multiple calls for each location. And so that's what I had. I don't know exactly when they arrived, other than to say these calls in any scenario are a priority, to say the least. So everybody's going, and they're going as fast as humanly possible. So that's the. I'm not done answering the first question. So was that enough, sir? Does that make sense on that? I will take a look at the arrival time so that we have that information, and we may be able to provide that at a different. And I would say this, okay? The way this is going to work, just so we're all clear, the way this is going to work is if we have a Q&A and you ask me questions and I attempt to answer them, as soon as we start yelling over each other, I'm done. Just so we're clear. And we don't want to do that. We're trying to be as cooperative as we can across the board. But we'll be back another time, and we're just trying to figure that out. Yes, sir, right here.
We're coming up on 48 hours. Are you concerned the trail is growing cold?
I think that every minute that this goes on, we're more and more concerned, because what's the next thing that's going to happen? And we understand that, and that's why we're working 24/7 to bring this individual to justice and to try to bring some closure and overall safety to our communities. So yes, we feel that just as much as the community member does or any of us. This is a privilege. This is an honor we have to do something about these tragedies when they occur. In many instances, I've been in those scenarios, and something happens out of state, and you're sitting on your couch wishing you could do something to help. Well, we're in a position to do something to help, and we will. There's no question in my mind that we will bring this individual into custody one way or the other. I'm going to take one more question from you, sir, and then we're going to be done.
Confirm that you've identified 16 out of the 18 bodies, and if so, can you confirm the demographics, please?
Yeah, and I think that that may be a question, the specifics may be a question for a future briefing. We have identified and notified the families of 8 of the 18 fatalities that were involved in this incident. We mentioned those 8 murder warrants, and the reason why we have 18 victims, we only have 8 of those warrants. That's because 8 of those people have been identified, and 8 of those people, the families have been notified, which is certainly key for us to make sure we get that right. But further demographics around that, the colonel gave gender yesterday, and we'll take a look at ages and some other information. I'd like to be able to honor the group of victims by talking about them in a specific session that I would view coming shortly. 8 of the 18 have been identified and notified, not 16, and I don't know where that came from. So thank you very much. I do appreciate it. We will see you again along the way. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Okay, you've been watching Maine officials. They're holding a briefing on the unfolding manhunt in Lewiston, Maine. That was the State Department of Public Safety commander there who was giving us some overview of what types of activities they're doing in their investigation. He talked about processing the 2 shooting scenes. He talked about really zooming in on a boat launch area and the waters near that boat launch area where they found the suspect's car. Apparently there was a gun inside that car. And he also mentioned that they're going through more than 500 tips that have been called in to the law enforcement on scene. I want to bring in our analysts and reporters now. Antonia Hilton's back with us. Also with us is Frank Figluzzi, a former...
Okay. Yeah, there was a purpose that I had to do this. Basically, a demonstration, but also I wanted to get it on record what the hell was going on because I know MSNBC will be posting some of their stuff online as well, but I have to say it for a record, it scares the living crap out of me. If I'm going to be getting very guttural and very honest about this, this really scares the living fuck out of me. I hadn't seen or gone through anything like this since we had that Richard Ramirez asshole back in the 80s that scared the crap out of the San Fernando Valley with his rampage. Dealing with out-of-state lunatics that have a possibility, if they're still alive and still manage to get past the state borders, they can cross into another state. It takes days to get from Maine to California, and by car and by train, by truck. I mean, it's a long ass distance there. But what scares me is running into situations like that entails a manhunt. We have had we have had short manhunts out here in the Antelope Valley. There was one death that is still memorialized and commemorated, and I am reminded of it constantly. We had something called the Lancaster City Park. Now it's called the Sergeant Steve Owens Park. Well, because they're doing a manhunt for this one gang member who was in the neighborhood of the Antelope Valley a few years back. Several years back, actually. And he put the entire campus of Antelope Valley College, the place I go to, on lockdown. Luckily for me, I was at home because it happened on a particular day that I actually had a break between classes. I stayed home. Not to mention the transportation out here kind of sucks. Kern, you have to catch the Kern into one way to get into Lancaster and back. I mean, it's a bit of a nightmare, but I tolerate it. But this was a time that I had to stay home. It was about less than a block away when the action was happening. It was close to our parking lot facing 30th Street West. Between K8 and K. It was somewhere in the neighborhoods in that area. And in the area, the cops found the guy, but gunned down the sergeant. I think he was targeting him. And I also think the guy's also right now doing life, or maybe on death row, one of those two. So it was terrifying. I'm seeing the news blurbs happening on social media, and it was scaring the living crap out of me. I'm like, I could have been there, going through this shit, locked down in a classroom, not knowing what to do at this point. What was it, about a few years after that, I'm seeing UCLA going through the same damn shit. And there was a guy going on the campus gunning for a professor. Killed the professor. They got the guy. But this is terrifying. Some people may consider it exhilarating because they're watching it on news and probably get a thrill out of the damn thing. For me, I'm terrified. I'm scared shitless on this damn crap. How the hell am I supposed to be able to walk down the street and not feel like am I going to get rolled? Am I going to get shot to death just because? Something that I said or something done could have triggered these bastards. Would I be considered a random victim, or am I targeted? And this is what scares the hell out of me. I mean, they may know more about the damn shooter at this point over here. It's the other schmucks out there that, society-wise, we're going to be conditioned against. I didn't have to face this damn thing growing up as a kid. And it's getting a hell of a lot worse and worse. You know what was terrifying for a kid to see on news? Not that there was a natural disaster about to kill him. Earthquakes do that, you know. No, I see the President of the United States at the time getting shot. And the whole campus where I was at, Virginia High, when Reagan got shot, we went in a lockdown. And we had to have LAPD check every area to make sure everything was safe. We had to make sure before they released it. That's the thing I remember. Now, Google and YouTube, you may talk about community guidelines. And that's fine, Jim and dandy. We all hit the agree to the terms link before we signed on. Now, how do you deal with information like this? And how do you deal with the personal response on this one? I know people are going to be going crazy over the First Amendment rights at this point over here. And that's the thing. There are court cases past, what was it, 30 or 40 years within that period, okay? Just within that period. That was affecting both corporate and private sector. We had SCOTUS ruling on some of those things. That practically made businesses such as you guys not subject to the federal rules and regulations as you guys should have been. Citizen United or Citizen Joe or something like that. Those guys. Pain in the asses. But they made it to the where you guys operated as a business and not being ruled and regulated. Well, actually, scratch that. Scratch that. They ruled you guys as a person, not as a business. As a business, you would have had rules and regulations over that damn thing. But they were talking about, I'm trying to remember more of the case about this one. The Federal Election Commission had issues concerning about certain companies out there doing large-scale donations. They wanted to make them taxable, accountable, ruled, and regulated. Somehow, the Supreme Court decided companies are people, not companies, and therefore not subject to it. But they still controlled how much they can donate. And as a small person and not a large corporation, you guys can only get so much money to political figures. But the principle's still in there. I try to keep track of that stuff. So that's one of the controls we have concerning about the First Amendment being modified a great deal in the private corporations. And the general public is another thing altogether. But how to get that message across is whether or not it's going against the company guidelines or not. And certain examples out there are still against the programming of the marketing algorithms. Or maybe someone else is making that kind of decision, but it's still under the algorithms because the people don't want to be in charge of the damn thing. They set it up, but that's about it. Anything else, forget it. And what drives me crazy, things that needed to be said sometimes can't be said. There was an example that I got nailed on. I was trying to make a facetious example of the damn thing. Perhaps I didn't reword it, or perhaps I didn't put it in a way that was correct. We're already past that damn COVID nightmare, but we're still dealing with it on a constant basis, and it's a scary bastard to deal with, isn't it? It is. It's a scary bastard we're still dealing with. This is a scary bastard we're dealing with. The reality of a gunman coming out. Still at large, or is he? I have to keep this in perspective. He's miles away, But it still doesn't deny the existence of any other lunatics we have out here on the West Coast that may be doing the same damn thing. And we've already had our fair share enough as it is, and I'm not going to list them all, or any of them. The one lunatic I did, he's already dead. I don't have to worry about the asshole. He died in prison. Thank God. Right in hell, you asshole. There was also another one out there, but he did one famous, yeah, he and his compadres. He's been dead a long time ago. And his compadres are still trying to get out of prison. The ones are still alive. They're old and feeble. It still scares me that the lone wolves are still out there. And I'll talk about them. My experiences, my observations, my fears. My fears.